Welcome back to another episode, Angular Nation. We got the expert live events. Tonight we have the Cypress team. I have long been a Cypress nerd. Like I love Cypress basically since the beginning of Cypress. So I'm always excited when the Cypress team is in the house. Okay, so I want to give a quick shout out to AG Grid. You know, we wouldn't be here without AG Grid. We love AG Grid. And we also love Cypress. So without further ado, Jordan. Well, Jordan, I'm going to kick it off with Jordan. And Jordan, I want you to introduce your teammates as well. I'm excited. How are you doing?
For sure,
Happy
yeah.
Friday.
I'm good. Yeah, it is a happy Friday. So thank you for having us again. We love Angular and we love Angular Nation. So we're always honored every time you ask us to come. And we have a lot of exciting things we want to show you. We've been working super hard. So I think some things you guys are going to like, some things I've been getting a lot of questions about, we'll have some answers for, which is exciting. So,
but I wanted loves you guys too.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to, I didn't want to just be about myself. Like, I don't, like our whole team helped build a lot of this. And so I couldn't have asked the entire company to come, but I wanted to pick a few of our, my friends on our team here at DX. And so I asked Eli, and Eli's going to be doing a sort of, he's going to be doing a demo of basically Cypress 10 in a lot of ways, of some of the, like the new UI and some of the new features of it. And he's going to show you like how to migrate, that kind of thing, which I think you guys will really like. And then Robert has been working on a ton of content, and he just put up some changes to something called Learn. What's the actual name of it, Robert?
Real world testing with Cypress.
Okay, so it's like the basically from Cypress's like official like curriculum and how to like do certain things. And so he's going to be giving an update on that. So yeah, I'm excited for it. So I guess beyond that, we can kick it off to Eli.
All right, so what I am going to show today is the upgrade experience that you get when you're going from Cypress 9 to Cypress 10. And then I'm going to introduce you a little bit to the new Cypress UI. And so here I have an application. Unfortunately, it's not an Angular application, but in this particular context, it really doesn't matter because we're just doing end-to-end testing in this application. And so writing end-to-end tests is pretty much the same no matter like what framework you're targeting. But this is currently running Cypress 9. And so I'm going to go ahead and install Cypress 10.
Can you make it bigger?
Yep.
Thank you.
That good or even bigger?
Bigger is always better, but that's good.
Yeah, it doesn't scale too much each time I hit it. All right, so I'm going to say install Cypress. I'm going to say at latest. And this is going to pull down the latest version of Cypress 10, which we're on currently version 10.3.1. And I'll go ahead and get rid of that. And then I'll open up Cypress. And the first thing that you're going to see in the new Cypress UI, if you're upgrading an existing application, is you get this nice introduction video telling you about Cypress 10, letting you know like, hey, this is like a different experience. So it kind of gives you a warm introduction into the new UI and stuff. I'm not going to play it here because we'll be playing a video on a video, and that's just kind of weird. But I'm going to hit continue. And then it's going to start the upgrade process for you. Now in Cypress 10, there's a lot of changes. There's a new configuration file format. There's a new spec pattern that we recommend. Files have been moved around. Directories have been completely gotten rid of. All that kind of fun stuff. And so if you're to do this by hand, it's quite the process, but the UI will actually handle everything for you. And so the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to recommend that we move over to a new file pattern. And so the new file pattern that we recommend for Cypress tests is sci.ts instead of like test.ts or JS or spec.ts/JS. We recommend using a file that identifies it as a Cypress test instead of any other type of test. And that's because like traditionally with Cypress, your tests were separated from your actual code. But now with component testing, your tests are actually like intermingled with your code. And you might have other types of tests there. You might have unit tests. You might be running component tests from some other type of test runner right now. And so we decided to come up with this new file format to make it very obvious, like when you're actually opening up a spec file from Cypress versus another testing framework. And so this is going to go through and it's going to rename the specs for me. You can opt out of this. It's not quite intuitive how you do it from here, but the way that you would do it is if you just set up your spec pattern beforehand. We'll go ahead and do that. And then next it's going to say like, hey, we have a new support file name. Since we now, in Cypress 10, we now have two different types of tests. We have end-to-end testing and component testing. We now have support files for end-to-end testing and component testing. And the support file is kind of like where you go through and you set up everything that you need that every test is going to kind of share in common. So like if you're importing different types of assets or if you're doing custom Cypress commands or anything like that, that's what your support file does. So I'll go ahead and have it rename that for me. And now here we're getting into the new configuration file. And so in Cypress 10, the configuration file has moved from a JSON file into an actual JavaScript file. And this allows you to do a lot of things that were just kind of hard to do before, like setting up different types of environments, reading environment variables, just doing lots of like logic as you're like launching the app that was kind of hard to do before.
It's just doing all of this for you.
Yep. Yeah. So this is my,
Cool.
this is my existing configuration file right now, Cypress.json. I have a base URL set, and you can see that it's reading it and it's putting it exactly where it needs to go in the new configuration file format. I don't have a whole lot in my existing JSON file, but if I did, like it does a really good job at like figuring out where everything needs to go and all that fun stuff. So I'll say migrate, and that's it. We are now migrated and up and running on Cypress 10. You can see here that we now have two different testing types that you can select from in the UI. We've had component testing kind of like in that alpha state for quite a while, but with Cypress 10, like it's actually a part and integrated into the main UI, like brought up in front and center as a first-class citizen in Cypress. And when we launched with Cypress 10, we had support for React and Vue. And I think we'll probably have a little bit more to talk about additional frameworks here coming up later in this talk. But
Do you have time?
What's that?
Do you have time real quick for a question? We have
Sure.
Sonder, our resident problem child.
Fire away.
I love that you have a separate file type. Does my editor know about this?
Yeah, so I'll dive into VS Code here in a second. We upgraded the most popular VS Code icon library, which is I think aptly named VS Code icons. So it will show like a specific like Cypress icon when you view them. But besides that, it's just another JavaScript or TypeScript file.
I'm assuming that if I open a spec file, my editor knows it's a spec and it has some auto-completion settings and stuff around that. I'm pretty sure it doesn't know anything about .ci files. And as you are the one that come up with a new file format, I think it's kind of your responsibility to create
Just go
some
straight for the
support for that.
throat there, Sonder.
Sorry.
I told you he was our problem child, Eli. We love Sonder, though.
All right, so here is the project. And here is the spec. So you can see that this was called firstspec.spec.ts. Now it's first-spec.sci.ts. And because it's a sci file, we're showing a little Cypress icon next to the spec file. But besides that, it's just a TypeScript file from here. I don't have any, like the editor doesn't really do anything special because it's a spec file or anything like that. And so unless you have some extensions or something like that, that would do it. But I'm not aware of any. That would be interesting to look into, though.
Yeah, I think there are extensions that pick up spec files and complete Jasmine-like things. And if I recall correctly, there was something for that for Cypress also.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm unaware of that, so I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
But as far as like, you know, IntelliSense and stuff like that, like it knows like you're using Cypress because the sci is a global command. that gets registered, and so it picks it up. You get all your IntelliSense and stuff like that.
That is most of it anyway, but
Yeah.
Okay, Sonder, listen, we love you, but let Eli get through the updates, and then we're gonna pick on him. But let him just get through all of the updates, and then we're gonna circle back because we have plenty of time.
I politely put up a hand and didn't say anything,
Well, I know,
which was impressive for me.
All right, so
Okay. So now I'm into end-to-end testing, and here you get to choose what browser that you want to test with. And so this is going to scan your system and present any browsers that are compatible with Cypress on your thing. We got compatibility with Chrome, Edge, Firefox. The main big one that we're missing right now is Safari. There's that's in the works. I can't promise anything on timing for that, but the team is looking into it. But yeah, any browser that you have that's compatible will show up in here, and you just kind of pick it, and then you just say start end-to-end testing. And then you're going to be thrown into our new spec runner. And so if you're familiar with Cypress in the past, you notice here, this is probably like the biggest like visual difference that you're going to see. And we kept it kind of the same so that you would still like feel like you kind of know what you do. You'll come in here and you'll click on one of the specs to run the test, but from here you can actually switch specs. So you can go back and then you can select another spec. In Cypress 9, you had to like go back to the other launch pad and like select the other spec and whatnot. You can search and filter specs from in here. If you're connected to our Cypress dashboard, which provides like analytics around all your tests, you're going to see the actual analytics here in your application. You can view your settings. You can view previous runs if you're connected to the dashboard. You can switch browsers up in here. So if I wanted to switch to another browser, I can just do that and it'll drop me back off where I left off. And then I can also come up to here and switch back and forth between end-to-end testing and component testing right from the UI. So I don't have to like relaunch Cypress to do that.
this is so nice, and it's so fast.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. With Cypress 10, it wasn't like a goal to like really increase performance of your test running, but because of a little bit of a way that it's re-architected, it was just a natural outcome of it. We do a lot of things with like browsers and like loading windows and all that other kind of stuff that's a little bit different in Cypress 10 that resulted in faster test runs.
Y'all are just overachievers.
Cool, but that is the new Cypress UI. Any other questions?
I love this.
It looks really cool. It's a nice update from what we had.
Yep. Oh,
It's
something else that we have here is a new spec created. So you can create a spec directly from the UI. So you can say create empty spec, and then it'll create the spec file for you in the right folder for end-to-end tests. This is coming. We kind of have this now for component tests, but it leaves a little bit to be desired. In the future, what you're going to be able to do is select this, and from a component test, you can actually select your component that you want to test, and it will scaffold out a spec file that mounts your component and gets it ready to run, so you don't have to like do all that initial boilerplate code yourself.
Nice.
All right, well, Jordan, I think I will hand it back over to you.
Still has a question, Eli.
Oh, fire away. Where's that?
Still said, are we able to rerun just the failed test from the UI?
Just the failed tests. No, we right now we don't have a whole lot of fancy spec rerun features like you might be used to if you're using something like Jest, where it can like only like look at files changed or anything like that. We are working on that. We're calling that smart orchestration and smart test running. So stuff like that is going to be coming. But with here, like what you do is you just rerun the whole spec itself, or you can go into the files and you can still do your it.onlys and it.skips and stuff like that to get down into the individual tests.
All right, and Islam wanted to know if you expect the learning curve for newcomers to be different from older versions. I think the learning curve for Cypress has always been pretty good. Because I know people that were writing tests before Cypress came along, everything that I heard from day one was, it's so much easier now. That's why we love Cypress.
Yeah. As far like we try to make the UI as easy to use as possible. And so hopefully the UI is intuitive enough that you can go in here and use it without much of a learning curve. Most of the learning that you're going to be doing is in the Cypress tests themselves, like writing the code and the specs and whatnot. And with Cypress 10, that experience hasn't changed a whole lot. There's a few things here and there, but that is mostly the same. So like all your existing like Cypress 9 and older tests are going to come over pretty much just fine. There's a few deprecations and whatnot, but there shouldn't be like any like major changes that you need to make to upgrade your test suite.
Yeah. Anna has a good point. The docs are really amazing.
I have another question, and that is not about the UI, but about the experience in CI/CD. Is there any change for version 10? Is it faster, slower?
You should see pretty comparable performance, if not slightly better, to the architecture changes. The biggest difference is that you can now run component tests along with your main end-to-end tests. You don't run them together, you run them as separate commands. And so you'll say like, Cypress run or npx Cypress run for end-to-end tests, and then npx Cypress run -- component for your component tests. So usually what we see people do is just run those sequentially with each other. Yeah.
Thanks.
I wanted to mention one more thing about the learning curve, and we'll go to the next section. That this is one of the reasons why I like to bring the Cypress team here to you, so you can actually chat with them, because the docs are really good, but then sometimes we do really complicated stuff with our code, and then we have to test really complicated code, which gets complicated. And so I just like you guys to see the Cypress team because they're super friendly and nice. And so that's my spiel. Anyway, go ahead, Eli.
Well, that's a great segue, because Robert is about ready to share some better ways to learn how to use Cypress.
Tell us, Robert.
Well, I'm from Florida. There's no guarantees I know how to computer.
Lord help us all.
See, here we go. Google Chrome might not have screen recording permissions. Oh boy.
Oh, sometimes you have to refresh. Yeah. You have to just like refresh your screen, and you'll be right back, and we'll be here and we'll wait for you. We're not leaving, don't worry.
Okay. Hold on. I might have to.
It'll be worth it.
I told you this is what happens. Florida man.
Did you get the settings thing to pop up for you?
Yeah, I think I have to quit Chrome and rejoin.
It doesn't take long.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
It's amazing. So
how's everybody's Friday? All right, that was fast, but you're muted, Robert.
Robert in the
okay. Let me try. How about now? Can you see stuff?
We can see you and we can hear you. We're excited.
Can you see my screen? The Learn Cypress site?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so what I wanted to share with you all today, I don't know how familiar the people on this call are with this site. I apologize if you hear my daughter fussy in the background.
I'm dropping a link to the site that he's on in the chat, y'all.
So what this is, briefly, just to get you up to speed before I talk about the changes that we made to it, is so back in March, we launched a curriculum called Real World Testing with Cypress. And so this is entirely free. It's open source. And what this curriculum is, it's comprised of 4 different courses. And what this is designed to do is to take anyone who, we kind of assume at like the base level, you have a basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But if you've never written a Cypress test before, or you're completely unfamiliar with testing as a whole, this entire curriculum, if you take it in order, these 4 courses will take you from not knowing anything about Cypress, never writing a Cypress test, all the way up to doing some pretty advanced things with Cypress. So the first course is like testing your first app, and that's the changes that we most recently made, which I'll get to in just a second. That's where we teach you how to test an application, but I'll go into further detail. Once you go through that, there's testing foundations. This is like theoretical and more philosophical of like how testing is a mindset. How do you know what to test and when to test, and how many tests should you write? What's the difference between manual versus automated testing? Like the testing pyramid between, unit tests, integration, and end-to-end, things like that. The third course, we teach you some fundamentals, and this is really important because we find a lot of people even people who have been using Cypress for a very long time, still don't have a good understanding of some of the ways that Cypress works kind of under the hood. So for example, like understanding the asynchronous nature of Cypress. A lot of people think that it's promises, and it's not exactly promises, although it's somewhat similar. Or how Cypress will automatically wait and retry and things like that. And then finally, in the advanced testing concepts, this is when we get into things like intercepting network requests, mobile testing, setting up data and like for data initialization, seeding, running stuff in CI, and stuff like that. So that's the curriculum as a whole. But as of yesterday, before I signed off for work, because I didn't want to push anything live on a Friday, the first course has been completely rewritten from scratch and updated. Originally, so this content was primarily written to make it as real world as possible. And the original content for this course was written against a to-do MVC application. And so we realized that a lot of people, that probably the majority of people, are not going to be writing tests for a to-do MVC app in their day-to-day job, unless you work for a company that's actually making a to-do app. And so this content was completely rewritten from scratch. And we built a brand new application for you to demo. It's actually very similar to this Learn site itself. And we've also included videos and screencasts and tutorials for all the lessons. So again, someone who's never written any Cypress tests before, if they come here and learn this, they'll be up and running with Cypress within just, half an hour, maybe an hour tops, if they go through it all back to back. And so we teach you things like how to install Cypress, how to write your first tests. We teach you some Cypress best practices of like how command chaining works, how you should get elements within your tests, things like that. We teach you how to test forms, some fairly basic, simple stuff, the difference between like happy paths, unhappy paths. And then we also get into like the concept of user journeys and why they're valuable and how you can write tests for them. So that is something brand new that we just released yesterday afternoon. That's pretty much all I got.
Right? That's
yes,
amazing.
Please,
and it's free?
Yeah. So the whole site's free, and it's regularly being updated, and we're making new content for it and videos and things like that. So it's really intended to be kind of like a platform. So the docs are already pretty solid, and we get a lot of compliments on the docs, but they're, in our experience of talking to a lot of people, even people who work and use Cypress at very, very large companies, they really struggle with some of the basics, and there's a lot of gaps between what our docs teach you and then what you actually need to know to actually write tests. So this is a whole separate curriculum and learning resource that will hopefully fill in those gaps. That's what it's intended to do.
That's amazing. So, it looks beautiful. You want to turn off your screen share?
Oh yeah, sorry.
So you worked on that?
Yes, yeah.
You should be very proud.
It was a lot of work. I mean, it was most of last year, honestly. And then the new content was a lot of work too. And I was joking with these guys. I have a whole new respect for YouTubers. I don't know how these guys make these videos all the time, because making videos is an insane amount of work.
Right.
But we get it done.
Robert is like the content king. He always has great Cypress tips and great content he's always coming out with. So you should
Well-
definitely follow him on Twitter if you're not already. Reach out to him on LinkedIn or something, because he's got a lot of great things like that. He's always talking
Robert,
about
you
it.
have to go to the chat and check out the comments from Glenn and Sil and Islam, and also maybe put your Twitter handle in the chat so everybody can follow you.
Sure.
And
Thank you for
like,
the
I love
feedback.
YouTube, but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this particular community and have it be a private community, so that we can all come in and turn our cameras on, because you can't get that on YouTube. Like, you can't actually see the people who are, well, you just get comments, but it's nice to actually be able to interact with people who are watching and consuming the content and come back with questions. And also I want to mention, because this is the beauty of building relationships with the Cypress team. Obviously, we're going to have to start being nicer to these guys because they're amazing, but they've always been amazing. We knew that. Is that we'll have them continue to come back, hopefully. Yeah.
Yes.
And so you can follow him and check out the content on the new site, and then come and give him feedback.
Yeah, and if you do come across anything on there, we would be very, very grateful for any kind of because it's open source. If you want to file an issue, or if there's any typos or something that doesn't make sense, like just there's links to the GitHub repo. By all means, you're not going to hurt our feelings. We want to make it as good as possible. So any help would be greatly appreciated.
And you can tweet at Robert. Be like, yo, what is this? What's going on here?
Yeah.
I'm getting this error message, Robert. What do I do? When I was first learning how to code, that was my thing, was I would always get error messages that were not in the tutorials. And I'm like, what do I do here? It's hard.
If I had a nickel for every time I got a DM of some random node error with no context whatsoever, I would not need to work at Cypress.
Come on. NPM not found is context. What are you talking about?
That's
Okay,
funny.
so this is amazing. You guys, I just think I speak for all of us when I say bravo. This is amazing. Do we have questions at the moment? Anybody? I have questions, but I'm just going to give it a minute to see if anybody else has questions. Sometimes we have to give them a minute. I learned this from office hours, because if I just sit here, see?
Ooh, there we go.
Tim Baldwin, how are you, my friend?
Good. I'm about to be driving, so I'll try and ask mine real quick. Maybe I missed it.
Crash.
No, I'm not starting the car yet. So you had mentioned something about platform, or I guess you talked about some stuff for React and other JavaScript framework. Were there any other framework specific announcements you were making today that I might have missed, or that you hadn't made yet?
If you hang on to the end of the presentation, I will be demoing Angular component testing in Cypress. So.
Okay, all right. I thought that might have been what was hinting at. I just didn't know the presentation was not over yet. We were just pausing.
No.
Okay.
There's more. I didn't even
There's
know
more.
There's
I knew there
more.
was. Okay, I thought there was more. We let off with that, so I definitely don't want to miss that part. Okay, thanks. I'll go back on mute.
Okay, well, but you're not driving, are you? Tim?
Yeah, don't start your car, dude.
Yeah.
Right?
I won't watch. I will listen, and I'll know when to go back on the recording.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's this part. Are we ready, Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay. It's right after
So-
Tim's question in the recording.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys a new thing we've been working on as well. It actually isn't even released yet, but wanted to give you guys a heads up. It will be hopefully coming out soon. But basically, with the news of basically Angular deprecating protractor, they haven't really gave like an alternative path forward or any any plans for like alternatives or anything like this. So we really felt like this was a great opportunity for us as a DX team and as a Cypress to try to make the transition from anyone who's currently using protractors to Cypress as best as possible. So we created this code mods tool called Cypress Migrator. And basically here you basically just put in your essentially your protractor code, and then it literally does the migration into Cypress for you. You can copy the code, and then it actually then gives you, it takes all the API methods that were used and actually gives you also direct links into the docs too. So if you're, maybe you want to know what site visit does or what the site should do, it'll actually take you directly to that in our docs, so you can get a deeper understanding of this, as well as we have a page on our docs that has a full how to migrate from Protractor to Cypress, kind of a more in-depth thing. But this is a tool that we're really excited about, and we think it's going to help a lot of people. You can see here is the entire list of basically things that we're code modding, which was unbelievably difficult to do. Adam and Paul and a big portion of our team played a big role in that. So wanted to kind of give you guys a tease of that. I think that that's something that hopefully you guys will be excited about for anyone who are using Protractor.
First of all, yes, we're excited. And second of all, we love Adam and Paul and we miss them. And I want you to give them big hugs for us and tell them that we miss them and tell them that they should visit. Next time we need to have Adam and Paul, just bring them, not because we need them, because you guys can answer all of our questions, but we love them and we haven't seen them in a long time. And this is amazing. And so we just basically can just paste in anything we want and it's going to do our work for us.
Yeah. So the main thing to note is that this is not meant to be like Protractor and Cypress are not like an apples to apples translation. But it does do a pretty good job of transforming them. It's more meant to be like a learning tool. It does do a good job of transforming them, but the idea is that you can, take a test, from Protractor, put it in here, run the translation, and the goal is that you will learn what the different API methods in Cypress does, and hopefully we want it to be a learning tool, not just to run this quick, copy and paste, and be done. You know what I mean?
All for us. We need guarantees.
When is the CLI version of this thing ready? So
I know, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do it all.
And then hopefully at some day we'll be able to add support for like Selenium or other languages as well. Hopefully at some point, but again, we've been pretty busy, so little steps. So
I mean, it's like I said, the first thing that we loved, everyone that I talked to that was using Cypress, the reason everybody loved Cypress is because it was easy, and you guys are just making it even more easy. So this is amazing. We already loved you.
So now I'll actually get to the thing you guys really care about. I can't share my whole screen because it's too big, probably. Let me share this. Here we go. Let me zoom in.
Now we get to the good part. We're already excited. Right. This has been such a good little preview, and now.
So here we have, we're working on finalizing the Angular, putting all this code into Cypress itself, but here's a preview of basically the API and kind of how it's going to look and work. So the important thing to note about component testing is that like Cypress, your end-to-end tests, they live like in the Cypress folder, in like an integration folder if it's before Cypress 10, or end-to-end folder if it's Cypress 10 or after. But like the way when you generate a component in using the Angular CLI, and it gives you like a component.spec file, like this, for example, we are doing the same sort of thing. You want your component test to live right next to it. So here, instead of app.component.spec, we have app.component.sci.ts. And here you could see we remove a lot of the just like crazy amounts of code you have to do, and it becomes just like much more straightforward. But essentially, this is what it looks like. It has side at mount. You pass it the component that you want to mount, and then you then pass it a config, and this is basically the same config that you're used to using with which has like imports, declarations, your providers, and then also if your component has any inputs, you can do that here. So let's see, and then here you get typing. So like if you wanted to tell the title to be like, hello Angular Nation, something like that, you get all this right here, and then this would then render in the component. So hopefully the API of this it'll just feel like, when I started using it, I was like, I think this is going to be a good idea. And then I like started writing tests, and I was like, this feels so Angular. Like it feels like the way we already wrote tests, but it's just way simpler. You just mount it, and then you just get the thing you care about, and you run your normal Cypress assertions.
Jordan, can you open them side by side? The before and after.
Yeah.
And then Glenn has a question too.
Sure.
So there's all that code that you don't need anymore.
Yeah, like before, you had like this. You had this asynchronous before each, and then you would do like, I think this is a Angular 14 project, so they changed this, but used to have like the before each, basically function, and then you'd have an asynchronous before each function, and it was like all this code, and in the end, you're just like trying to test something super basic, and you're really not like the thing that really, like the real win with Cypress, in my opinion, is that you're actually like testing your applications, like your components in a browser. So like you test them in isolation. And one of the things like I've really found is that it's great for like just building out components. So you can like, because normally if you're like in an application and you want to you're whatever, building a component, a card component or whatever, like you have to actually like navigate to the page where it's at or something like that. But here you literally just like mount the component, and you can literally like it's like TDDing the creation of a component, which is like super cool.
Too easy.
Yeah. Glenn, looks like Glenn and Sandra
Glenn.
has a question. Yeah.
Glenn, the lead host of our community testing channel.
Hey, so I want to ask, so I want to understand testing as much as I can.
Yeah.
Hey, so is this the component tests here? Can you think of them as unit tests? And is there a place for Jest, for example, to live together with Cypress component tests?
Yeah. So I don't think that. There's a couple things here. One is Cypress. Its bread and butter is end-to-end testing, and obviously, I think component tests eat at, front-end frameworks. They're built on components, right? So it's like this replaces a good portion of things that you would unit test, but it doesn't replace the need for like if you had an NGRX store and you wanted to like test your reducers, unit test your selectors, or things like that, you wouldn't want to replace. The thing to keep in mind, if you had like a specific method in a component that you wanted to like run unit tests on the method, you wouldn't do that really with Cypress. You're going to be testing, it's almost like a mini end-to-end test. You're testing what it would output, like a user would interact with it in the browser.
Okay.
So it's like if you click normally you would like test, if it was like a stepper component, you would test that when you click the increment button that, it takes the initial value and it outputs the new value. Or it's like in Cypress, you wouldn't do that. You would basically just click the button and then make sure that the new value gets displayed on the DOM correctly. And you don't really care how it got updated. You just expect that it updated. So
I like what you said a minute ago about like using it during development, like TDD type stuff. Where does it fit in with CI/CD? Like when you're continuously integrating and deploying, would you still run the component tests in that environment?
Yeah, you definitely could, because I mean, I think if there's certain functionality in your component, especially if it's like reusable and you want it to be shared across teams or applications, you want to make sure that those tests don't break over time. But I think in general, I think the benefit of it is you gain, like, end-to-end testing is hard to do TDD with, even though you can do it with Cypress, and it's much easier to do it with Cypress than like any other framework. I think doing it with component testing early on like makes a lot of sense, and actually it helps the process. And I'll show you here in a second. But when you're done with all of the development, you still have the test that you can still run. So it's like you're kind of getting like this bonus at the end. You know what I mean?
I like what Tim said in the chat. Think of Jest as testing the business logic and Cypress to test the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm done.
Sure thing. Sander?
Well, my question is, does it work with standalone components already?
It does, yes.
Oh, good. That's good to know. And also, I really think you should see this as testing your presentation or your template part of the component, and your business logic is done with normal end-to-end tests. There is no place for business logic in a component anyway, so this is great.
that was going to be the thing I mentioned, is like you shouldn't be really putting if you have a lot of things you want to unit test in a component, it's really a smell of something bigger. In the end, you want your components to be super small, super lean, and that's where, like, we have observables and other ways to updates, get state in and get state out. But I think it's a great point.
There should be no business logic whatsoever in a component. This is an often made mistake, and it is okay if you are exploring something to do it temporary, but it should be taken out as soon as possible.
Let's see. I have a massive screen, guys. I'm going to see if I can show this. Let's see. Oops. I'm going to, because I'm going to have to keep going back and forth. See if this might have to be like super tiny. Okay, can you guys see this at least? Maybe.
No problem.
So here it's running. We'll run it in Chrome the same way Eli demoed it. And here we can see all of our components. If I run this one, you should be pretty familiar with what this is. This is the, our Angular application, the one that we often get demoed. Here is, again, an NGRX example, an observables example. Again, they just kind of run, like, you want to make sure when you click this thing. But the nice thing is, like, for example, how I was sharing, like, is say we have this like stepper component that we're building, right? But then we want to, like, let's work on the styles of it. So then you go to count, and then you go to your styles, and you'd say, okay, I want to make the button not so ugly, so I want to add like a padding of, like, I don't know, 15 pixels. I save it, rerun super quick, and it's like right there. It's like, okay, I want a margin of 10 pixels in between, save it. It's like super quick. And so it's like you're just getting like really quick feedback along the way, and background, whatever, like, want it to be white. So that's one of my favorite things, is just how you sort of like you get to like view this component in isolation, actually in the browser, like the way a user is going to use it. And then like actually writing the test is like super easy. For this example, normally like in an NGRX, like if you were testing the component, you would use like the provide store, which basically is kind of like a fake implementation. If you do that, you have to basically trigger state changes manually, because it's not like meant to update state. but because this actually runs in the browser in like a real example, you actually want to import your store directly. Here I have like my count store, which is just like a 4-feature module. And then here you're just, I'm getting the thing. I'm mounting it before each one. So you could do a mount here. And then I'm clicking the thing. I'm making sure it says 0, clicking it, making sure it says 1, so basically making sure increment works, decrement works. So these tests are like very, very, very like simple, very easy to read, very easy to write. And I just found it like really fun to do. So yeah, that's like it. Don't have an official release date, but it is coming very soon. Let's see if I can stop presenting.
Anna wants your monitor. Well, I was just tweeting you guys, we are blown away by Cypress 10, by the new doc, the new Learn Cypress site is amazing. The new Angular stuff is amazing. So great.
Thanks. Well, it was great to come share with you guys as always, and hopefully you guys enjoy some of the hard work we've been putting in, and hopefully it makes. I always hated testing, but like once I got introduced to Cypress, I was like, testing was kind of fun again. So I hope that it makes writing component tests for Angular like fun. That's my goal.
I think it really does. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions, comments, other than love for the Cypress team? We're really going to have to start being nicer to you guys. Y'all are doing amazing stuff over there.
I'm just wondering, like, were you mean to us?
No. I always loved you.
I think one other thing I wanted to point out, I don't think we mentioned this, is that since you guys are probably already familiar with writing end-to-end tests, the nice thing about writing component tests with Cypress is that the API is the exact same. So really the only difference between end-to-end tests and component tests is in the end-to-end test, you do like sci.visit to visit a URL. In a component test, you do sci.mount and mount the component. But all the APIs that you're already familiar with, they all just work. There's not like separate APIs for component testing and for end-to-end. It's all the same. So all your intercepts, all your gets, all your everything, it just works out of the box.
That's amazing.
So there's nothing for you to learn if you already know Cypress.
You know, we're always excited about what you guys are working on.
Wait,
okay,
what? I cannot get this today?
Hopefully in a couple weeks, but not today. So
not a good answer. Not a good answer.
Know, sorry.
Hey, they have to eat dinner too and spend time with their families, just like you do, Sonder. You know the drill. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording and we're going to start the Friday social. You guys are more than welcome to stay and hang out with us. But before I do, you know the tradition here at Angular Nation. Everybody, please. And by the way, one more quick shout out to AG Grid for their support. And also, I just want to give a shout out one more time, really, to the entire Cypress team. Give Adam and Paul love for us. I love Emily. I love everybody. And the whole entire team. Robert, I didn't know you before, but I already like you. You did such a good job. You guys are amazing. Okay, everybody come off mute and help me give the Cypress team some love.
Yay. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eli.
Everyone. Excellent. Awesome.
We love you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.